Hello, people. This is Mac with Mac Commentary. And also, we have Bob with us today as well. Hello, Bob. How are you?
Hello, Mac. I'm doing fine, thank you. How about you?
I'm doing okay. I thank God for another day. As we live on this earth, a lot of things going on that we have no control over. But with faith in God, we don't care, really, do we? Because
That's
He's
right. If I'm going to worry, why should I pray?
right, because He's the one in charge of everything. And He's gonna, as long as we believe in Him, we will be okay. I truly believe that. Bob, something interesting came across our desk here in the last day or so, where that more than 100 U.S. Leaders, lawmakers, presidents, governors, and justices have slaveholding ancestors. This was a Reuters examination. That's what they found. But few are willing to talk about their ties to America's original sin, unquote. Bob, I'm gonna play a video here that was put together by Reuters and what they found, and let's take a look at this video and take it from there.
At a time of renewed debate over slavery and its legacy,
slavery is the original sin.
Many U.S. leaders have staked key positions on policies related to race.
This legislation will not erase centuries of systemic racism and excessive policing in America.
But what about their own family ties to slaveholding? A first-of-its-kind Reuters examination reveals the extent of the connections between America's most influential public officials and what is commonly called the country's original sin. Reuters found that 118 of America's most powerful leaders have direct ancestors who enslaved Black people. They include 5 living presidents, 2 Supreme Court justices, 11 governors, and at least 100 of the 536 members in the last sitting Congress. Reuters sought to understand what it means for them to learn in personal, specific, and sometimes graphic ways the facts behind their own family's part in slavery. Few of the leaders were willing to talk to us, however. A team of reporters traced the family trees of some of the most influential politicians in the country. Correspondent Tom Lassiter worked on the report.
We took those initial sort of roadmap family trees and with a group of reporters went through and sought to verify each rung, each step, if you will, of the family tree. Use the census as sort of a main organizing document, but used many other sorts of documents: birth records, death records, marriage announcements, contemporary newspaper reports, local history books. I spent a lot of time under the dome of the Library of Congress looking at local histories. Yeah, it could be quite a process. And again, that's examining those documents, but also looking for other documents such as wills, family Bibles, tax records that would establish whether it was the case that that ancestor in question had enslaved people.
The Reuters research was vetted by board-certified genealogists who reviewed each case that linked a slaveholding ancestor to a contemporary leader. From conservative Justice Amy Coney Barrett and Republican Senators Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham, to Democrats Elizabeth Warren, Tammy Duckworth, and former President Barack Obama. LaBrenda Garrett Nelson was one of the genealogists.
The contrast between President Obama, whom you don't associate with enslavers, and then Amy Coney Barrett, that they're people at opposite ends of the political spectrum in many ways, but they have this in common, and that illustrates how integral a part slavery was to the country.
There's a discussion of slavery as a thing that just existed, and not a question of, well, who enslaved those people? I mean, specifically, who enslaved those people? Who were their families? What did it mean for their families? Who were the people who they enslaved? what did that mean, not only for the enslaved, but for those who came after them, their descendants. And I think there's a first basic step of just establishment of facts.
None of the 118 leaders identified by Reuters disputed the findings. Reuters made clear to each that it was not suggesting they were personally responsible for the actions of ancestors who lived 160 or more years ago. Even so, most remained silent on the subject. But Lassiter says the interviews Reuters did conduct were powerful, especially one with an Illinois member of Congress who called the information that Reuters unearthed gut-wrenching.
I interviewed Senator Tammy Duckworth, who was familiar with the genealogy with the family tree, because her family had an amateur genealogist who really sort of mapped a lot of it out. But she did not know, this is through her father's side, which is from Virginia, that her ancestors had enslaved people. And, she just spoke very frankly about sort of her sense of pride of being a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution, that if she was going to sort of celebrate that part of her family heritage, that she needed to also, reckon with and sort of look squarely at the fact that her ancestors, two of whom had enslaved people.
California Representative Julia Brownlee told us she was hit to the very core to learn an ancestor had enslaved 2 adults and 1 child.
I feel very much obligated to face up to my history, to learn my life and what happened, and to bend into it. I think it's important for each member of Congress, in terms of their heritage, and it is important for them to know that and bend into it. I mean, we as policymakers, members of Congress, we want to move our country forward to sort of that more perfect union, if you will. But we can't do that without knowing the scars in our history as well.
The Reuters findings come at a time of renewed and intense debate about slavery's legacy in the United States.
The national reparations policy is a moral, democratic, and economic imperative.
And what, if anything, lawmakers should do about myriad matters related to race. From protests over police treatment of Black people, to the removal of Civil War-era monuments to the Confederacy, to how to teach about slavery and racism in American classrooms.
Slavery was one of the biggest sins in our country, and it's important for us to teach history and the truths of our history, knowing that our democracy is not perfect, and to keep that from children is not a good thing. We want our children to be critical thinkers, to understand the decades of slavery that took place in our country, decades of segregation that took place in our country, decades of continuing racial inequality in our country.
Finding out that information will help everyone move forward, says New York Representative Gregory Meeks, whose great-grandfather was enslaved.
Oftentimes when individuals say we need to go back to the way America was, I don't want to go back to the way America was. And I make sure that I articulate that to my colleagues. Seeking the truth makes us all better. It makes us understand what the past was so that we can also have a better today and tomorrow.
We saw consistently in the polling that those who said their families had enslaved someone, those who said they knew that their family had enslaved someone, were more likely to support reparations, for example, and that held true across party lines. Potential voters said that, knowing that candidates' ancestors had enslaved people might affect the way they voted. So I think I think these are, profound issues, not just of history, but of contemporary conversation in America.
I really believe, especially with respect to this Reuters project, that some of the notables whose genealogies we reviewed will pause and think about what it means that they, again, were kind of indirect beneficiaries of slavery. It wasn't something that just happened 200 years ago.
Well, Bob, what do you think? That was a very detailing and very articulating type of argument there. To me, for reparations. How did you take that, Bob?
Well, as I sat here, looked at it back, it kind of reinforces in my mind the fact that the Negroid will never get reparations in America, just because of that fact. You got over 100 people in the Congress and previous, and these are just the ones that we know about. But think of the thousands and the tens of thousands of Caucasoids out there who know that about their families, who will resist to the death, like in the Civil War, to resist to the death, given slave descendants reparations, and you haven't heard anything from them. It interested me that 67 of the 100 plus people that they found out about refused to even respond to it. And I thought, wow, well, if there's just 100 that they know about in Congress, and there's 535 senators and representatives, that's about 20%. Let's take 20% of the population has that same number of people with that same kind of ancestor heritage. It gives you a big force to resist giving the reparations to those slave descendants that their relatives owned.
Right, and they didn't go into all the details in this particular 8 minutes or so video, but they said that in 2022, the governors of 11 of the 50 U.S. states were descendants of slaveholders. They include 8 chief executives of the 11 states that formed the Confederate State of America, which ceded and waged war to preserve slavery. 2 are seeking the Republican nomination for president. Asa Hutchinson, former governor of Arkansas, and Doug Burgum of North Dakota. Now, Reuters found that at least 8% of Democrats in the last Congress and 28% of Republicans have such ancestor. The preponderance of Republicans reflects the party's strength in the South, where slavery was concentrated. Although white people enslaved Black people across northern states in early America, by the eve of the Civil War, slavery was almost entirely a Southern enterprise. But this is interesting too, Bob, as we talk about reparations as well. Every member of the state's 9-person delegation to the last Congress has an ancestral link. The state's 2 Black members of Congress, senators and Republican presidential candidate Tim Scott and Representative James Clyburn, a powerful Democrat, have forebears who were enslaved. Each of the 7 white lawmakers who served in the 117th Congress is a direct descendant of a slaveholder, Reuters found. So too is the state's Republican governor, Henry McMaster. Now, you would think that Tim Scott and James Clyburn would be really jumping up and down and shouting that for reparations, but you haven't heard a peep from either one of them, have you, Bob? Matter of fact,
No,
they
no,
asked.
not.
Matter of fact, when Biden only got when he won the primary in South Carolina, it was a lot of that felt a lot of people thought that Clyburn had a lot to do with that since he's a representative from that state. And he was asked by a reporter, now that Biden has won the nomination for president, what do you think he owes you? Clyburn looked the guy up straight and matter of factly stated, he owes me nothing. I don't want, we ask him, what do you want? Oh, I want nothing. Well, it's not all about you, Clyburn. It's about the 40 million blacks in this country. I mean, you don't want anything, but what about the rest of the blacks in this country who's still suffering? You got your $170,000 job and pension for life. So these are the, I mean, Tim Scott running around like he's some big Republican. I mean, talking about all the different things that what he's going to do as president, still continue to keep the yoke on the blacks. That's what is going to happen with him, because he's going to do exactly what they tell him to do. So I tell you, Bob, it's a you might have a point there, but I'm not going to give up kicking and hollering about reparations. And you know, it's an amazing thing too when they walk in that Capitol every day, Bob. They see how intimately tied America remains to the institution of slavery. Because
well, back, you're just making my case, man.
What they walk in there, Bob, and there's a block of sandstone displayed in the visitor center in the U.S. Capitol now, which commemorates the important, and I quote, important role in building the Capitol, unquote, played by enslaved workers.
Right.
Now,
who didn't get paid a dime.
Right, they didn't. And that goes back to Cori Bush to support her 22 million hours, which amounts to about $97 trillion in today's money.
Right.
And I mean, blacks run around here, they think like, oh, we don't need anything. That's the ones who, Bob, those particular blacks like that are the ones who, in fact, have somehow or another been blessed with opportunity and advantages that most of the other blacks have not been blessed with. And they walk around, oh, I don't need any reparations. They've forgotten about those cousins and nephews and kinfolks that's down on their luck and haven't been able to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, so to speak, you know?
Right.
They've forgotten about them, Bob. And so
I don't know if they've forgotten about them back. I think it's more of a disinterest. They really don't care. And if you look back throughout history, there've been turncoats against their race for centuries. So they're not a peculiar part of the race. They're just turncoats within the race. So I don't know. I don't think that, and I don't think they've been. I think they've been. I think they're. When I think of someone being blessed, I think of them being close to God. I think that these people are more close to Satan than they are to God. So I wouldn't characterize them as being blessed. I would characterize them as being Satanized. Because if they were really blessed and felt like that for their, they would live according to what we've been told. Jesus said when he was asked what was the main law. And he said, love God with your heart, soul, mind, strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Well, who else could be a closer neighbor than your own tribe or your own tribesman, another black? You know, because that's how I think that's how why the Caucasoid is able to keep control. He wants to have his people uh, uh, uplifted, but the
Thank
but
you,
the
Bob. Thank you, Bob, for correcting me on that because I agree with you 100%. You explained that so eloquently, man. I mean, it's not about being blessed. It's about being uh, selling your soul to the devil, right?
yes, that's what I see.
Oh, okay. Well, that's awesome to understand that, Bob. Uh, let let me ask you this though. What do you think about Mitch McConnell when he makes the statement? Because he's one of the Republican senators they identified when he was asked about reparation. Now he's Senator McConnell is from Kentucky, Southern state, and surprisingly enough, I believe he's married to a Chinese woman. But when they asked him about reparations, he made the statement, well, I don't think that they need any reparation. We gave them civil rights and affirmative action. So, Bob, I just want to know how do you look at that, Bob?
well, well, uh, that fellow Mitch McConnell, he's now. If you look at those two black fellows that you mentioned earlier, with regards to their race, uh, and you look at Mitch McConnell with regards to his race, if you turn the page backward and look at what he was running for reelection and all that Donald Trump did for him to get him reelected, and how he's turned on Donald Trump. I mean, if he'll turn on his own Caucasoid brother like that, you know what he'll do for a slave in the field. I mean, he could care less about us than a frat rat behind.
Wow. I, I guess you're right on that, Bob. I hadn't looked at it from that point of view, but I can tell you one thing. I don't know how these people can live with themselves when they have, just as this woman's representative stated there, that they have received all of this white privilege that's been handed down to them from generations to generation, and they had it easy. You know, Bob, it's amazing. Someone was telling me the other day is that he was talking to one of his friends, and his friend is living in another country right now in the Latin America, and he is doing so well because he never had to work a day of his life. And what he does is he works on computers on the internet. But to get to that point, whenever he had a rough time in his life, and he's in his 40s now, when he had rough times in his life, he could always go home and live in his $1 million home, father's home, and stay there with him until he got enough money to go back and travel again, which was given to him by his father, you know.
Now, is this a Negroid?
This is a Negroid.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
But this Negroid, he's never really had to suffer for anything, Bob, because his father
Yeah,
was
sure.
there and provided for him. Now this is the same. Now you don't have too many Negroes like that, Bob, or Negroids, as you
Uh-huh.
call it. We don't have too many blacks like that. I mean when you compare it, put it in proportion to the whites like that. Now the whites,
Oh, right. Sure.
they've been like that for centuries in this country. They've been able to do that, and that's why they've been able to accomplish more It's because they got all this leisure time to sit around and tinker with things. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But you take the average black, and of course many whites as well, but I'm talking about proportionate now. He has to be out there worrying about where he's going to get that next a sack of flour from to try to feed his family. You know,
Yeah,
he
sure.
doesn't have time to sit around and tinker with things. And you know,
Zach, can I inject something into what you're saying
yes, go right ahead,
that
Bob.
occurs to me?
Yeah,
You know, what you're saying makes so much sense, because if you think about these guys that have started these big companies, if you think back, they always talk about how they started in a garage. Those guys that started the iPhone and the iPad, and
MS
the guy that started
Gates,
Amazon, him
Gates,
and his, you know, uh, and they all started out like you're saying, uh, doodling with things around their parents' house, you know, and then uh, turned it into a mega corporation like it is today. But I didn't mean to cut you off, but that occurred to me inconsistent with what you're saying.
exactly, and that's exactly what I'm saying about. I just use this one particular guy as an example, someone that I know of from a very personal type of contact. You know,
Yeah, sure.
I'm just saying that that's the way this kid is, a young man is. But the thing it is, he doesn't think that he's ever seen any racism. Because he never had to get out there and fight for it. You know what I mean? Even though,
Right.
and I can't understand why when he traveled to these countries and he's on the same plane with whites, why with these countries of Latinos who happen to be of dark hue, why would they not treat him as equal as they do the whites on that plane, you know, when they
Yes.
get off
Yeah.
and go through customs. And I've heard this on many occasions, Bob. Even though I traveled to only place I've traveled in Latin America was for an extended period of time was Puerto Rico, you know, and I did not like that place over there. I'm gonna be honest with you, Bob. Now, the Puerto Ricans in this country, I don't have a problem with them, but over there, somehow or another, you do have a problem with them. And so,
Oh, okay.
so, and so I'm just bringing that into a focus here. But I think that the real thing is, why is it that all of these hundreds of people here who are who are who are descendants of slaves, why is it that they can't they see all the advantages that they have had in life, just like in Great Gatsby? Father told him, said, son, you got to remember, when you go out in the world, you're going to meet a lot of people. But you got to remember that all the people who are less fortunate than you have not had the advantages that you have had.
Yes.
But none of these people here, apparently, I wouldn't say none of them, but it seems that most of them here, they have had all kinds of advantages, Bob.
Absolutely. And I think that if you looked at them, those that, let's just take those that are in Congress that have been identified. Uh, if you looked at them and you were able to get them to sit down, they called upon a lot of the ex slave owners, friends and relatives that are friends and relatives of theirs, in order for them to get those seats in the Congress.
Exactly.
You know, that was the base. You might say those were the original members of their network marketing company. I mean, they used them. They said, well, Bob, you go out and get five, and get the 5 relatives, and then get them to get 5. That, and then before you know it, they've gotten the endorsement of thousands of people in their neighborhood just to put them to strike a check by their name in a voting booth.
Wow. Well, I tell you, Bob, I think that we as black people, we can't wait for them to give us anything anymore. I mean, because
Oh no,
like you said, they're not gonna come up and give it to us. I mean, if we want something, we're gonna have to fight for it. We're gonna have to take it. That's the bottom line. If blacks don't
I
come
think you're
together,
right.
I mean, we can go out there and we can fight each other, Bob. We can go over there and take the ball away from the kid over across the street. We can do all those type of things to each other, but we are not willing to go out there and fight for against them for what we are rightfully deserving, and that's
Yes,
reparations in this from this
right.
country. Now give reparations to everybody else, and then they go. And I heard some white say the other day, "Well, you don't hear the Jews hollering about in the Holocaust reparation." I said, "Where has this guy been?
Right.
Was he like an ostrich that keeps his head in the sand but only raises it when he hear blacks want this?"
Right. Right.
I mean, it's amazing. And even Obama, who's I see him on the thing here, the second from the left there, next to Biden. They say he's a descendant of a slave owner, I guess, on his mother's side. So
Yeah.
therefore, what he did absolutely nothing for blacks, as far as I can recall. But what he did, he gave the Jewish Holocaust victims in this country $12 million so they could die with a dignity, Bob.
And back, that just hold your point, right? Think about all of the work that we did to go. And I'm not a Democrat, nor am I a Republican, but I went out there and worked my butt off to get Obama elected, man. And
So,
I know you did because you recruited me.
well, I tell
And
you,
if
Bob.
and if we went to Obama and told him, look, we want you to start a campaign for reparations like we started your campaign of Yes I Can, he would have us arrested, man.
Oh yeah, at his administration, he had his wife to go and give $70 million to the Pakistanis to educate the Pakistani girls doing that. His
Right,
there.
right.
And I mean, and I'm just wondering if this what the black man did, how if we can expect anything from him, how do we expect anything from these other people who come from the other slave holders, of the white
Right, right.
that who are white? I mean, it's mind-boggling, Bob.
It is mind-boggling, but you have to take it with a light heart, Mac. Otherwise, you'll get yourself so stressed out and depressed, like I used to years ago. But I don't anymore because I see it much more clearly, and that's why this information that's coming out now about the slave owners and the slave descendants is so revealing. Because I agree with you. You would think that there would be thousands. I mean, well, not thousands, perhaps tens and hundreds of the blacks that are our leaders in the Congress. They would be jumping up and down, to use your term, saying, "Look, I mean, we this. You owe us this money, man. Give it
Yeah,
up. You know, this is a debt that has become due, and we're not even charging you interest on it. Pay up today, you know." But
right.
no, our people, you know, I keep hearkening back to one of my mentors years ago when I was a younger kid, Dr. Morris, Dr. Tolson, uh, uh, told me and several of our classmates, our people are lost because they're ignorant. Well, I'm beginning to think that Dr. Tolson was right in one sense, but he was not completely uh, didn't see the complete picture as I think perhaps I may see more of it today. Not only are our people lost because we're ignorant, we're lost because we got a lot of traitors within our race who don't want the 40 million of us to be free. They talk a good game, but they don't want to put up, you know?
You're right, Bob. I mean, we don't have enough of our people out here that wants to really help the other average black out here. I'm talking about our people who have quote made it unquote.
Yes, right.
And it's you know, we looked at something the other day where they talked about there's 8 billion black million I mean 8 billionaires. Now you tell me, Bob. I mean, you very good with math off the top of your head. If you got $1 billion, how long would it take you to spend that in an average person lifetime?
Well, well, let me put it to you like this, Mac. First of all, $1 billion has got a lot of zeros. That's 1,000. That's $1,000 million. $1,001 billion. Okay, so now let's just say Bob was a billionaire, and I got $1 billion. Most of us are not going to live to be 100 years old, but let's just say that I could live for 1,000 years. If I could live 1,000 years, Mac, and I'm a billionaire, I could spend $1 million a year and not run out of money. And in order to spend $1 million a year, and it's not it's not increasing at all. It's just a $1 billion a year. I would have to spend about $3,000 a day. So I could spend $3,000 a day
For 1,000 years.
for 1,000 years and not run out of money. So, you know, I mean, if I live to be 1,000 years old, but most people, like I said, they wouldn't live to be 1,000 years. So you take that and say, okay, well, I mean, 100 years. So you say 1,000. Well, that means that I could spend $10 billion a year. You know, and not run out of money if I'm a billionaire. And what could you? I mean, the average person is not going to even see $1 million a year, $1 million period in their
Right.
lifetime.
Right.
You know.
So the reason I brought that up, Bob, was to try to make this point here. Why is it that a person with that amount of money couldn't set aside $100 million of that to start businesses that's in the black communities or somewhere that's hiring and providing wealth opportunities for blacks in the black community, and they'll be
right,
increasing and making more money, and they could be. And if they did this, what's that word you like to use, Bob? Exponential. If they did this in each city, what would their wealth exponentially grow to?
right.
I mean, it ain't no rocket scientist, man. It's
Right.
it's arithmetic.
Right. That's all it is. It's 2 plus 2 is 4.
And I mean, but yet they rather sit up on their little stone with, throne with their $1 billion and look down on all the blacks who just can make 30,000 or 50,000 or 100,000 or 200,000 a year.
Right. Right.
It is so, like I said, it's mind-boggling how people. Maybe that's why certain people got this type of money, because you know, they're not gonna. The powers that be only let certain ones have this money because they know what they're gonna do with it. They just gonna
Yeah.
do nothing with it, and eventually they're gonna put it back into the system, and they'll get it back anyway, because they're not
Yeah.
gonna do
Yeah.
anything to help those other blacks. I mean, it's just like I've heard that the richest man in Africa worth $27 billion or something like that. I don't know whether I'm accurate on that, but I can't understand. I mean, that guy could be doing so much over there, Bob. I guess he's doing a lot, maybe, but but he could do even more than that if he has the wherewithal and the and the attitude to go out and try to help his people, you know? And the same thing
Right.
with these few billionaires here in this country, you know? They
Sure.
can
Sure.
adopt a country over there in Africa and invest in that country, and they could do things that would be unbelievable for people. The same thing they could do in this country. I mean, if you go into some areas of your city there, Bob, or some areas of Philadelphia or Cleveland or other big cities like that where we have big black population, large black populations, you'll find it's devastating, man.
Yes, that's
No,
true.
and none of the ones who so-called have made it are doing anything about it. And the politicians, they're not doing anything about it, because I want you to relate to our audience, Bob. What did a politician tell us once when we went down to talk to him regarding his
Oh,
constituents?
right. I remember that. I think you had asked him a question about his constituents, and or how large his constituency was. If I recall correctly, and the guy said, in responding to your question, he said, "Well, uh, all I need is I think he said 3,700 votes to get reelected." He said, "Those are the people I'm concerned about. I ain't concerned about the." I think you had asked him how many people were in his district.
Oh yeah, right. I think you said it was something like 30. Was it 30,000 or 100,000 or something?
Yeah, but he said it was only about 3,700 that he was really concerned about, and that guy has since retired. Now this is a state representative, and I think, and his son was in the meeting with us,
Right.
and now I think his son has taken over that seat. So I think that that's the way these politicians. That's how they measure their success on how they can, once they get a seat. Because I did read where that woman Cori Bush, who put this HRES 414 into the into the as a bill, she miraculously won the seat there in St. Louis that had been held by the Clay family for more than 50 years. And she beat out the son in I guess two elections ago, or one election ago. But that just goes to show me that these politicians, once they get a position like that guy in North Carolina and the one in South Carolina, they don't want anything because they got everything. Once they become a part of the swamp, they know how to get all the trinkets that they need for themselves and their families, and they could care less about the race.
Right, Bob. And what I like the people that's listening to this to do some to to comment on what we are discussing here. about these 100 legislators, governors, Supreme Court justice, and 5 presidents, uh, descendants of slaveholders. To what do you think about that? And also, what do you think that we as a people should do to get our reparations? I mean, we can't keep dropping this ball year in and year out and talking about it. We've got to do something, and we need some people out there. We got some good people that's listening to this who have the wherewithals and the intellect to organize in your communities, and let's get people together and march on Washington. I mean, who should we start with? Maybe we should, if you are a Muslim out there, you contact the Muslim headquarters there in Chicago and get Farrakhan on board with this idea. He's dropped the ball so many times anyway. Maybe now we need him now to get his people together, get out there and start to getting people to organize throughout these United States, and so we can have another 5 million or 10 million man, woman, child march on Washington, D.C. If we were able to get 1 million men there, we should be able to get at a minimum of 4 to 5 million households there. I mean, people in a household there. We get a 1 million household, and every 4 people to a household, we should at least get 4 million people there. But our goal should be for 10 million people. And people, I want to hear from you. I want to hear, what do you think? Do you think that this reparation, this $14 trillion reparation, which amounts to about $350,000 per each slave descendant, you think that it's worth fighting for? Because it's not so much about the ones who probably has the money, it's about the ones who, it's for all of us. It's for the ones out who haven't made it. And they can, in a way, be able to have some inheritance. They could go out there and buy a house, and be able to leave some inheritance to their offspring, to their kids, their grandkids. And that's what we should be focusing on, Bob. Do you agree?
That's right. I agree with you 1,000%. It's not the ones that has the money, it's the ones who need the money, man.
Right. And if the ones that got the money don't need it, they can put it into a fund to create businesses that will help build up the Black communities.
Right. But they don't have any loyalty to the race, I don't think, back. But I think that's a dynamite suggestion, though. I mean, if you could get people on your podcast to begin to communicate with you what we ought to do in order to get these reparations, because they're not going to give it up. I mean, now that we know that there's that many congressional people who are descendants and own slaves, they're going to be fighting against this. But if you get 5 or 10 million people there in Washington, letting them know, look, you owe us this money, man. This is a debt that has come due, and we expect you to pay. They might start taking a second look at what's going on, because I think we're going to get close to a civil war if we don't.
And I think if you look at each one of those persons that's on that list there, they are worth at least $1 million, if not $5 million each.
I would bet that you're absolutely right. I put my bottom dollar on that.
And there's some on there worth multi-million and maybe even be billionaires that we don't even know about.
That's right.
But Bob, it's been great here discussing this with you, and I'm glad that you brought it to our attention. And we just gonna stay focused on this reparations, man, and whatever we do. But all our conversation tomorrow, I think or later this week, we will discuss what's going on over there in Russia and Ukraine, and what the United States, what their game plan play has been in this whole thing. I understand that there's been some rumors out there that that the Wagner group head, Persigan, he was offered $6 billion to overthrow Putin. And he went and talked to Putin, and Putin said, okay, take the $6 billion and then we'll send you to Belarus. And I think they played him, Bob.
Right. Hey, you know something? You just gave me another thought, Max. That's going to be an excellent topic, because you know what occurs to me? Probably some of those people that are in Congress that would resist giving us our reparations, those are people that are sitting on boards of many of these industrial, military industrial complex companies that are supplying weapons, billions of dollars worth of weapons to that Ukrainian war, and wouldn't want to give a dime to a descendant of a slave in order for him to go and get something to eat.
You're so right, Bob. And they got their police state here working quite well. I mean, if you see what's happening here, how they patrol the black neighborhoods, and what they do in those neighborhoods to the people when they catch them, they violate not only their civil rights, but their constitutional rights.
That's right.
And it's which I guess is one and the same, but I mean, however you want to look at it. But we know they're violating their constitutional rights because they snatch them out of the cars, they search them, they search the cars. They don't care because they don't think that those people have a voice. And that's one of the things I think that I'm going to start referring people to a YouTube channel to go and learn about their rights.
Yes.
And I want to thank you, Bob, for another great time here. And I want the people to not forget to make comments on this on this topic today, and write down in our comment section there. And also, I'd like for you to subscribe, because we need your support. We need you to subscribe, and so we can continue to have. Well, either way, we're going to still have these talks, Bob. I mean, whether. But we want people to subscribe and share these videos so we can get the word out about reparations. And thanks, Bob. And you have a great day, man. And we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Mac, and you as well.
Thanks, Bob.